From the time we started this series, from the day number one, we are appreciating Spring Boot like anything. We're like, Spring Boot, you are really cool because you are giving a feature called auto configuration. Even you go to web, if you're gonna search for different blogs, everyone they will be appreciating Spring Boot like anything because Spring Boot is providing a feature called auto configuration, which reduces the stress of the developer. So auto configuration feature is really, really cool. But how basically it works? So in this video, the main intention is to introduce you guys to a Spring Boot feature called Spring Boot auto configuration and how basically that auto configuration works behind the scene and how you as a developer can utilize this feature called Spring Boot auto configuration and can create your custom auto configuration files which can help you to set up something in a automatic way whenever you're creating or whenever you're working in any Spring Boot project. So that is the solo intention. This is a step-by-step guide which is going to introduce to you to the Spring Boot auto configuration feature, will help you to write custom auto configuration. It will also show you what are the different auto configuration which is happening behind the scene from scratch. Hopefully this is going to be an exciting journey, and make sure one thing, that this is one of the topmost asked question in any Spring Boot interview. So if you are an entry-level developer, even if you have experience in between 5 to 6 or 5 to 7 years of experience, this is a question you're going to be hearing a lot in your Spring Boot interviews. Can you tell me about the Spring Boot auto configuration and how it works, everything step by step. Here we go. Watch this video and I hope the things will be clear by the end. Hi, my name is Avilas and you're watching SeleniumExpress. Without wasting any time, let's roll the intro. Okay guys, before you go ahead and watch this video, make sure that you are liking this video, you are subscribing to my channel if the contents are helpful. By the way, don't subscribe if it is not for you, if the contents are not for you. So I just want some genuine subscribers. So do subscribe if the contents are helpful and if you want to see this kind of contents. And also I will really appreciate if you're going to put a comment. Just let me know, is it helping, is it not helping? Tell me something positive, tell me something negative. Comment anything, criticize me, appreciate me, do whatever you want to do, but write something in the comments so that I can read your thoughts and I can understand, okay, what is there in your mind. Okay, so I hope that you are also going to share this video with your friends so that they can discover my channel, because my channel name is SeleniumExpress and people think this is a tasting channel. This is not. This is purely a development channel. Okay, so let's just go through this video and I hope that you're going to be finding it helpful. Whenever you are creating a Spring Boot application, you are basically getting a jar by default. And what is that jar? That jar is called Spring Boot Auto Configure jar. You can see this is the jar that we have over here. Inside your my event dependency, I have the Spring Boot Auto Configure jar. So if you're going to be opening off any Spring Boot application, you're going to be getting this Spring Boot Auto Configure jar over here. Okay. And inside this jar, Spring Developer has created some Java classes for you. So this jar is a combination of many different auto configuration classes. For an example, if you look at that, there is some DAO related auto configuration. There is some MongoDB related auto configuration. There is some Redis related auto configuration. There is something web related auto configuration, free marker related auto configuration, GraphQL related auto configuration. So S2 related auto configuration, RabbitMQ related auto configuration right here. So if you're going to open up this package, you're going to be getting the RabbitMQ related auto configuration classes over here written by the Spring Boot developers. Like that, if you're going to go to the Cassandra database, there are some Cassandra related auto configuration. This is a Java class and they have written this class to set up Cassandra database automatically for us. So before we understand all these things, just remember that there are a lot of different classes. So if you're going to go to any package, for an example, you're going to this JPA package. So how JPA will be automatically configured with a Spring Boot application, that related a thing, Spring Boot developers has created some classes, and inside this class will automatically run and will configure the JPA related things and stuffs for you. Just think like that. So Spring Boot developer does what? They have written a lot of different auto configuration classes related to JPA, Cassandra, caching, wave, security, blah blah blah, and zip it inside a Spring Boot configure jar, this jar. Okay, and what they have done, whatever class these are all packages, right? And all these packages will have auto configuration related classes, right? So they have, let's say 200 auto configuration classes Spring Boot developer has written for us. They said, okay, I know that if you as a developer need to set up a Spring Boot project with JPA, or a Spring Boot project with web, or a Spring Boot project with security, or a Spring Boot project with Cassandra database, then you have to do some primary setup. And we as a Spring Boot developer team do not want you guys to do those primary set of things. So the Spring Boot development team, they're saying, okay, we as a Spring Boot development team, we know that if you want to configure anything, then you need to write some of the primary things. You need to create some beans, you need to write some configurations, and we do not want you to write those configuration, because in any Spring Boot project, if you are integrating JPA, any Spring Boot project, if you're integrating LDAP, any Spring Boot project, if you're integrating Spring Web MVC, any Spring Boot project, if you're integrating Spring Security, then you have to write some basic configuration. And we as a Spring Boot development team knows like what configuration thing that you'll be writing. So we will write it by default for you. Okay. And once you start your application, those things will be automatically configured. And how that thing is happening? So they have written all these things, all these packages consist of different auto configuration classes. Now, if you're going to go to this meta inf folder that you have inside this Spring Boot auto configure project, if you go to that meta inf folder, inside this folder, they have a file. If you go to the Spring folder, and if you're going to go to this file, org.springframework.boot.autoconfigure.autoconfiguration.imports, right here, they have mentioned all their auto configuration classes right over here. You can see there are so many classes here. So these are different auto configuration classes that we have. For an example, S2 console auto configuration. You can see Mongo data auto configuration. For MongoDB, JPA repository auto configuration, JDBC repository auto configuration. There are different types of auto configuration classes are there. Free marker auto configuration, GraphQL auto configuration. So there are a lot of auto configuration classes that they have written, all those classes entries that they have put over here. For an example, this GraphQL auto configuration class, you can do a Control-Shift-T and go into that class. Okay, this is the auto configuration class written by Spring Boot developer. We don't have to understand the code for now, but look at that where it is. It is inside which package? It is inside, if you're not getting the package option, click on this link to editor and see this is inside the org.springframework.boot.autoconfigure.graphql package. This is the class, and this is inside that jar called Spring Boot autoconfigure jar. So like all the classes that we have in different packages have an entry to this file. So this is a file which consists of different Spring Boot auto configuration classes written by Spring Boot developer. So when we start our Spring Boot application, all these auto configuration classes, let's say there is a Rabbit auto configuration that Spring Boot is doing for us. If I do a Control-Shift-T, if I go into this, so how the RabbitMQ has, RabbitMQ and Kafka kind of thing, right? How those things will be automatically set up with a Spring Boot application. This class has those information. You can see a lot of beans they're creating. A lot of things will be automatically created for us, and we as a developer don't have to do all this configuration. So just remember that we have this file which consists of different auto configuration class written by the Spring Boot developer. Right now, if this things makes is not making sense for you, then I'll show you a slide for making it easier. So now look at this. Now we have a file. We have a auto configuration file, and here lot of Spring Boot auto configuration classes are here, like Tomcat auto configuration, Dispatcher servlet auto configuration, Java to JSON converter auto configuration. So these classes are written by the Spring Boot developer. We know about this. So we have many classes like this, and they are placed inside a auto configuration file. Okay, I already told you what is that file name. Okay, inside these classes, what we have, for an example, inside the Tomcat auto configuration class, this is a Java class where we have a bean getting created. For an example, we have a bean called create a Tomcat server. So Spring Boot developer has already written some code inside it. Like once this auto configuration class is activated, this bean will be automatically created for me. I as a developer doesn't have to specify how a Tomcat server will be created, and I don't have to create any specific bean because I will be needing a Tomcat server. I don't have to configure it as a developer by myself. That will be automatically configured by the Spring Boot development team because this class has been written by the Spring Boot development team. Like that, I have a dispatcher servlet auto configuration. This is again a Java class, and inside this class, they are creating a dispatcher servlet for me. So create dispatcher servlet. So Spring Boot development team has already written how a dispatcher servlet bean will be created, and obviously once this particular auto configuration class is activated, this bean will be created and this bean will go into the application context, right? So I as a developer, I don't have to create a dispatcher servlet by myself. Spring team has already written the code how the dispatcher servlet will be created and how it will be stored inside the application context. So the Tomcat auto configuration class, the dispatcher servlet auto configuration class, let's say Java to JSON converter. I don't have to write the Java to JSON converter in Spring Boot. Spring Boot team has already written a converter inside this auto configuration class. They have created some bean, and that bean will take care of helping me converting my Java to JSON or JSON to Java. Okay, so these are the auto configuration class which has been written. So this class are doing what? They are creating me some beans out of the blue. On the fly, they're creating some of the bean for me, and I as a developer don't have to write all these beans, right? That's what we understood. Now the next question. As I'm telling you, when the Tomcat auto configuration will be activated, the Tomcat server bean will be created. When the dispatcher servlet auto configuration class will be activated, the dispatcher servlet bean will be created. So when they will be activated, how they will be activated? They will be activated from your starter app. I have told you in every Spring Boot application we have a starter app, right? And inside the starter app, what we are doing, we are using the run method. The run method is doing what? It is bootstrapping my application. And in our starter app, we are using this annotation called enable auto configuration, or you may write a at Spring Boot application annotation, and at Spring Boot application internally consists of at enable auto configuration. So whenever you are writing at enable auto configuration, in this file, all this auto configuration class will be triggered, right? And all this auto configuration class will be triggered and they will be activated, and all these beans will be created. And that's how all this auto configuration magic is happening, and I as a developer don't have to do all these things by myself. Now there is a question, right? Okay, Vilas, so let's say this file basically goes to this file, right? This is the file which consists of all the auto configuration. Let's say you are looking for dispatcher servlet auto configuration. Okay, let's say this is a dispatcher servlet auto configuration file, right? Let's say when it will be triggered. Okay, when it will be triggered. So whatever I told you, that whenever we are activating the at enable auto configuration, this auto configuration file will be triggered and the dispatcher servlet bean will be created for me. So what about now? If you're going to see in my application, I have this main application called starter app. The starter app has the Spring Boot application, and the Spring Boot application internally is having at enable auto configuration. So what I told you, that this dispatcher servlet auto configuration class, if I'll do a control shift R to this or a control shift T to this, and if I go into this class will be triggered. Okay, if this class will be triggered, obviously inside this class I should having some dispatcher servlet bean. See, there is a bean, and this bean is basically creating a dispatcher servlet for me. And internally, if you're going to be seeing the code, it is creating dispatcher servlet is equal to new dispatcher servlet. So Spring Boot is creating a dispatcher servlet object for me, and I don't have to do it manually. I don't have to set up the dispatcher servlet. It is already creating a dispatcher servlet object. Just look at to the line number 89, and it is returning this dispatcher servlet right here in the line number 95. And you can see this is already annotated with @bean annotation. Now the question is, okay, Vilas, So what I understood here, in this file, dispatcher servlet auto configuration is there. Okay, and you are also using the Spring Boot application annotation. That means this particular file will be triggered and that dispatcher servlet bean will be created. Like that, I can see there are so many classes, right? In all those classes, there are all these classes have the admin annotation inside that class. This should be creating some bean. What about if I don't need that bean? Okay, let's say this dispatcher servlet auto configuration. When this dispatcher servlet auto configuration will come into the picture? When we will be creating a web application, whenever we are having any incoming request. But let's say I am not using any web application. I am not creating any web application. I am creating a standalone application. Now, this dispatcher servlet auto configuration I don't need a dispatcher servlet to be get created. I do not want a front controller to handle my request. At that time, why should I want a bean of dispatcher servlet to get created, right? Like that, I may not need a Tomcat server to get auto configured, because I do not need a Tomcat server. Let's say I'm using a desktop I'm using Spring Framework to create a desktop application, not a web application. So I do not need a Tomcat server to deploy my application. At that time, if you are saying like, if you're gonna see here, whenever I have this annotation, automatically this class will be activated and automatically this bean will be created. But I don't want this bean to be get created. So how Spring Boot is sensing like when the Tomcat server need to be auto configured, when the dispatcher servlet need to be auto configured, how Spring Boot can sense it? Let's say I have hundreds of configuration classes placed inside this auto configuration file. Then I do not want all those beans to be get created. Those are thousands or tons of bean. I do not want them to get created in my container, and I do not want my application to get heavy weight, right? And there comes, you have to understand a fun fact. This auto configuration will not create the bean out of the blue. It's not like, even if you don't need it, the Spring Boot will create a dispatcher servlet configuration bean or a Tomcat server bean. Spring Boot will not do that. Spring Boot has intelligence, and this intelligence comes from some conditional annotation. This conditional annotations means this bean will be created but based on a condition. For an example, Tomcat auto configuration you are having here. You are just saying create Tomcat server. Maybe you will be creating a Tomcat server bean here, but this bean will not be created directly. Based on some condition, this bean will be created. Let's say you are creating a standalone application. Right? If you are creating a standalone application, then do you need the Spring Web jar? You don't need the Spring Web jar. You do not need the Spring Web MVC jar. You do not need servlet jar, isn't it? So why do you need the Spring Web jar? Why do you need the servlet jar if you are creating a standalone application? The servlet is for the web-based application. Why do you need the Spring Web MVC jar? Web MVC for the Spring Web application. So what you have to do, you can see the Spring developer are very intelligently written one annotation here called conditional on class, right? So there is an annotation here called conditional on class on top of this bean, and they are writing servlet.class here. So what this conditional on class annotation does mean, if in your class path, in your Maven dependency, if you have added the Spring Web jar or servlet jar or web MVC jar, if you are using web MVC jar also, internally the web MVC jar will get the servlet jar transitively, right? So in your class path, if the servlet.class is present, then only create the Tomcat server bean, right? Conditional on class. Only when this class servlet.class file is present inside your class path. If you have the jar placed in your class path, in your Maven dependency, if you have the servlet class present, then only create this bean. If it is not present, don't create the bean. Simple, right? Let's say you are creating the dispatcher servlet bean over here, but this bean will not be directly created. So this bean will only be created when there is a conditional on class over here, and if there is a dispatcher servlet, DS means dispatcher servlet. If the dispatcher servlet class is present inside the class path, let's say if you are pulling in the Spring Web MVC dependency and putting it inside your class path. If you have the Spring Web MVC dependency in your class path, internally you are going to get the dispatcher servlet class, right? And if that class is present inside your class path, then only you create this particular bean. I'll tell you how. Let's say I'll go to here, to your project. So I have the dispatcher servlet auto configuration. Go to this, do a Control Shift T here, open this class up. Okay, you can see this class already having a conditional on class. That means this dispatcher servlet will automatically trigger, only see this annotation, don't see all the other stuff, will be having separate sessions to that. But this is a auto configuration class. This class will only trigger on conditional on class. This class called dispatcher servlet should placed inside the class path. Let's see if it is there. Click on this dispatcher servlet. This is your dispatcher servlet class. Have you written it? No, Spring People has written it. So do a link to editor. Click on this arrow mark over here. Look at that. Now dispatcher servlet class is present here. Inside which package? Inside this package. This is inside what? Spring Web MVC. Who have faced the Spring Web MVC? You only. You added the Spring Web dependency in your Maven POM file, right? Then only the Spring Web MVC got phased automatically, and the dispatcher servlet class is also coming with it. So it is inside your class path. You only have pulled this thing as a developer. You are placing this particular jar inside your class path. Now Spring Boot will sure, okay, this guy is placing Spring Web MVC inside the class path. That means he is creating a web application. If he is creating a web application, then obviously he will be needing a dispatcher servlet. Why should I tell him to create a dispatcher servlet? Let me create it by myself. Now this is the dispatcher servlet auto configuration. This will be automatically triggered, and you can see, if you scroll down, you can see you have the dispatcher servlet method, which is basically helping you to return a dispatcher servlet object. Here only you are creating the dispatcher servlet object and returning this object right over here. Don't worry what it is setting. We don't give a damn. Just want to tell you that this dispatcher servlet bean is getting created. So you can see a lot of beans they are creating. Obviously they are having some conditional on bean or conditional on missing bean. There are a lot of different type of conditional annotation. In lot of different beans they are creating, they are having all this conditional annotation. No need to get worried about it. We're going to be having sessions on this, so not to worry. So what I'm trying to tell you, if you're going to come back to my keynote here, all these beans that you have, that they will only be created when there is some certain condition matched. And one example that I have given you called conditional on class. That means this bean will be only be created when there is a class present inside the class path called servlet.class, then only this bean will be created. When there is a class present called dispatcher servlet class inside the class path, then this bean will be created, right? And like that, not only conditional on class, there are different types of conditional related annotation. For an example, conditional on bean XYZ. What I mean by XYZ, I'm just writing something random here, XYZ. That means look inside the application context. If there is a bean created by the developer called XYZ, then only create this bean. So to create this bean called create Tomcat server, both of these conditions should match right now. Conditional on bean XYZ, that means inside the application context, look, there is a bean called XYZ present or not. If present, then only create this particular bean. Like that, conditional on class, look inside the class path, that if there is a servlet.class file present inside the class path, if present, create this bean. So only when this couple of condition match, create this bean. Only when this condition match, create this bean. So all the auto configuration classes that they have written inside this particular file that I have told you, they will not be automatically configured, and all the hundreds and thousands of bean will be automatically created. No. Very intelligently, Spring Boot has some conditional annotation. There are a lot of conditional annotations we'll be discussing later. These are very few. Conditional on bean, conditional on class, conditional on missing bean, conditional on missing class, conditional on properties, conditional on missing properties. There are a lot of conditional annotation they are using on top of the bean method or on top of the auto configuration class to make sure these classes will trigger based on some condition, or the beans that you have inside those classes, they will be created based on some condition, and accordingly they are sensing, okay, this guy is creating a web application, he might need this, let me configure it. So this guy is creating a standalone application, so he doesn't need any web related features, so I will not configure all this bean. So these conditional annotations only helping you on the auto configuration setup. This is a very high level idea. Just use it for understanding. If it's making 5% sense also, that's fine. All right, so right now, let me just show you an example of auto configuration, and let me show you how basically Spring Boot auto configuration works in action. Okay, so we have the Spring Boot project, the Hello Spring Boot project. This is the project where we are working in. And right now, I will go to this and I will create a class. Okay, and maybe what I'll do, I'll just create a new package here. Maybe I'll just directly create a class here and put it inside a package called autoconfig example. Okay, this is a very little example that I'm going to be giving you. Later we'll be diving in. Okay, so imagine I have a class here called Spring Boot course. Let's say I'm offering a Spring Boot course, and yeah, so this is going to be my course syllabus. So inside my Spring Boot course, I'll be just writing public void show Spring Boot course detail. Okay, so I have a Spring Boot course class here, and I have a very little method here called show Spring Boot course detail, which is going to print out the course related information about my Spring Boot course to this to the console. Right? So now let's say if I want to call this method, obviously I need to create the object for this. So I have the first way to create the object, not by myself. I can tell Spring to create the object for me by writing the add component annotation, and Spring will create an object or a bean for Spring Boot course and put it inside the container. And we guys know about it. So right now I can simply go to my main class, which is going to be the starter app. And inside the starter app, you can see we already have the Spring Boot application, and right here it is having the component scan activated. So any classes which is present inside the package where this class exists, and obviously this class exists inside this package, or any sub package where this class exists, and right now this class exists inside this package. So any sub package of this class. So right now inside this package, I have another folder called autoconfig. It should be autoconfig, right? So refactor, rename, and I can just say autoconfig. Sorry about it. Yeah. So if I'm going to show you how it looks like. So right now, if you're going to go to the properties, and if you're going to go to if you're going to open and I'm showing it in my Finder view. And you can see this is the project that where I'm working on. Inside the source, main, Java, com, SeleniumExpress, Hello Spring Boot app. I have all these folders, right? So my starter app is here. So my starter app is here inside this folder. So all these classes will be automatically scanned, and also this class is here. So whatever the sub packages like autoconfig package that we have created, inside this, whatever classes are also there, they will be scanned as well. So that's what I'm trying to say, that wherever this class is, right, this class exists inside this package. So all these classes will be scanned, and also this class is inside this package. And if you look at this package right now, this is ending with autoconfig, but look at the prefix com.seleniumexpress.hello Spring Boot app. This is the extension of this, and inside this I have another subfolder called autoconfig. So all these classes are also going to be automatically scanned by this annotation, right? So in that case, the Spring Boot course object will be created by the Spring Boot if the component scanning is happening, and obviously this object will be go to the container. Right now, let me just get the object from the Spring. Let's say let me ask Spring to give me the object of Spring Boot course so that I can call this particular method. And right now, how to do that? I will go to my main application called starter app. So right now here I told you that whenever I'll be starting this application, obviously first of all my main method will be executed, the run method will bootstrap my Spring Boot application, and the run method will give me an application context back. This is going to bootstrap a Spring container for me where my object will there, where my Spring Boot course object will be there.
right? So what I can do right now, I can ask my container right now. I can have a container here. I can have an access to the container right here. So this run method internally going to create a container. I can have access to the container by handling the return type over here, or directly I'm going to say over here, okay, I know that internally this is a web application, and I know that Spring Boot run method is creating a web application context or a Spring container behind the scene. So get me that object. So web application context, and I will just say, container. Okay. So inside this container, I can ask to this container that, okay, get me that bean, so that I can call that method. I want to call this method right now called Spring Boot course detail inside the starter app. So in order to call this particular method, I need the object of this, and this object has already been created by the Spring Boot because we have @ component here. And that's why I'm having an access to the container, and I know this container is getting created by the run method. So I'm going to ask my Spring to auto-where the object of the web application context so that I can get a hold to the container. And right now I can ask the container my bean. So where I'll be asking the container my bean called Spring Boot course. So what I'll be doing, instead of doing it over here inside the main method, what I will do, I will extend this class. So extends this class to a interface. I think interface means you have to implement. So I'll be implementing an interface called command line runner. And this interface has a method. If you go to this interface called command line runner, it has a method called run method. Okay, so I have to override this run method. So I can hover on this, and I can just do add unimplemented method. Now it is going to give me a run method back. So here you can see that it's a run method, and I can just write my code over here. I can call that method that I have inside the Spring Boot course, this method, right over here inside this run method. So basically, before I do that, if I'll just write anything over here, sysout, I'll just say hello world, right? So now this method will be automatically gets called by the Spring Boot. So once the Spring Boot application starts, let me just remove this code for a minute. Okay, now if I will start my Spring Boot application, this is my Spring Boot application. If I'll start it, first the main method will be called, first the run method will be executed, first the Spring Boot will be bootstrapped, first the application context will be created, and the container will be created once the run method runs. And once that is done, what I will do, I will write this run method, and this run method will be automatically called by the Spring Boot. So just want to show you that if I will go to this application, and if I'll start this application, you're going to be seeing this hello world text on my console right now. So if I'll go over here, you can see there is a hello world there inside the console. After my web application context get initialized, after my run method execution done, the run method will create the web application context. After that works over, this run method automatically getting called. I'm not calling it. This is a callback method called by the framework automatically, and it's executing the code inside it. So right now here inside the run method, I just want to write some of the code, and that code will be showing the Spring Boot course details, and I'll be removing that hello world string over here, and I'll be going back over here, and I'll be getting my code back. A web application context in the container I'll be auto-wearing, because Spring Boot run method will be creating this object. So I'm just auto-wearing it over here, and now I will be just doing what? I'll be just saying container. Okay, just get me the bean, get me the object of the Spring Boot course, because I want to call that method. So what is the Spring Boot course is the class name. So I can copy this, go to the starter app, and here I can say Spring Boot course.class, right? And now this is going to get me the object back. So assign statement to a new local variable. This is going to get me the Spring Boot course object back, and I can call the method. So I can just say Spring Boot course.show Spring Boot course details, and this is just going to show me all the course details. So let me just run this class one more time. Let me just relaunch my application. Okay, and you can see my Spring Boot course details are here, and this is something which is getting printed, the course that I'm offering, and the contents that I have inside it. So what I mean by that is that the getBean method is giving me the Spring Boot course object, and on top of this object I'm using this method or calling this method, and which is working like a charm, and the object creation is taken care by the Spring Boot. This much is simple, right? You understand this, right? I think if you have a little bit of Spring foundation, this should be very much clear. Now let's just jump to the auto configuration part. All right, so now who is creating the object for me? And that Spring is creating the object for me. If I write the component over here, Spring will create the object for me. What about if I'll remove this? Obviously this application will fail to start right now because we are looking for this bean called Spring Boot course, and this get bean method is right now going to throw us an exception, and this is the exception it is throwing. It is saying that okay, a component required a bean type for Spring Boot course that could not be found, and it is giving me a suggestion that consider defining the Spring Boot course bean in your configuration. So it is saying that okay, the Spring Boot course bean is not found because you have removed the add component annotation. So if you don't want to write the add component annotation, you can consider creating a configuration bean for the Spring Boot course. So obviously I can do that. I can copy this, I can come over here, and this starter app, as I said, this is also my configuration class because the Spring Boot application consists of an annotation called Spring Boot configuration. That means inside this starter app, I can also define my beans or the bean definition over here. So I can come down and I can define one of my bean over here for the Spring Boot course. So I can say Spring Boot course, and I can define my bean over here. I'll just return a new Spring Boot course object over here, and let me just put a bean annotation over here. Now I'm creating the bean by myself, okay, and I'm putting it inside my starter app because this is also a configuration file, and yeah, the run method will bootstrap first, and when the run method will create the container, it will also take care of creating the Spring Boot course bean and will keep it inside the container. And whenever this run methods will execute, after this main method completes this work, this run method will be executed, and I'm asking the container to get me the bean for the Spring Boot course, and by the time Spring Boot course bean has already been created, and I will be getting the access to that, and I can call the method of Spring Boot course details. Simple. So this should right now fix the issue and everything will work good. So if I'm going to see my console, you can see I'm getting no exception and my method executes fine, Spring Boot course details, and it's just showing me the course details, which is really good, right? Now, one thing I will do, instead of writing my bean over here, I'll be taking it to a different configuration file. So what I will do, inside my config, auto config folder over here, I will go ahead and create a class called, let's say, app config. Okay, I'll just say app config. This is going to be my configuration class. So what I will do, I'll go to my starter app right now. I'll move this bean instead of putting it over here inside my starter app. So what I will do, I will go to my app config and I'll put my bean over here. Right now, will it work? So let's just see. Now my bean has been moved from here. So right now I'm going to do container.getBean over here and asking for the Spring Boot course bean. Let's see whether I'm going to get the Spring Boot course bean over here and if I'll be able to call the method called show Spring Boot course details. So I'll relaunch my application and I'm sure that we're going to be having a problem here. Now it is again just saying that Spring Boot course bean could not be found, and it is asking me to configure it in the Spring Boot course bean to configure it inside my configuration file. But I already have a configuration file over here and I'm defining my bean. So what is the problem here? Simple. Because this class is not getting detected by Spring Boot. So when the Spring Boot is doing a component scan, this app config is not getting detected. So I'll be just writing a configuration annotation over here. And you guys know the configuration annotation behind the scene is having a component annotation. So if it is a component, it will be eligible for component scan. And you know that your starter app is having this Spring Boot application annotation, and this annotation will be doing the component scan behind the scene. And if it is doing the component scan, this class will be detected because it has a add configuration annotation right now, which internally has the add component annotation. So this is a component right now will be detected, and then this bean will be created and my error will go away. Now if I will resume this, now you'll be seeing that we should not have any error, and I'm getting my course detail method is showing me the course content that I have for my Spring Boot course, right? Which is really cool. Now here comes the another annotation right now. So basically here comes the fun part. I do not want to create this Spring Boot course like this. Instead of configuration, I have another annotation called @autoconfiguration. Right? So I'm going to say @autoconfiguration. Autoconfiguration, let's just do a Control-Shift-O to remove any unnecessary imports. Now I'm just writing @autoconfiguration here. So what I mean by autoconfiguration, so I'm automatically going to configure the Spring Boot course bean over here. So this is also simple, like the autoconfiguration annotation also works like a configuration annotation, and will also help you to detect this autoconfig file, and this bean will be created. If the bean will be created here inside my starter app, I will be able to get the Spring Boot course bean, and I can call the Spring Boot course title method on top of the object that I'm getting from my container. Let's see if that is happening. If I'll run this, we'll have a problem. You can see the same problem right now. It is saying the Spring Boot course that could not be found over here. So that this bean is not found. It's saying component required for the bean type this is not found. It is asking me consider defining a bean for Spring Boot course in your configuration. But I'm defining my configuration file over here and a bean over here for the Spring Boot course, but it is not getting detected. So if you're going to see the add configuration annotation, it also have the @configuration annotation inbuilt. So auto configuration, if you go inside this, it has embedded with this annotation called @configuration. If you go to the @configuration, it has embedded @component. So if I write add configuration or add auto configuration, this both are same thing, right? No, it is not same thing. If you're going to see the add auto configuration annotation, you can see it has inbuilt @configuration annotation, but there is a beautiful thing over here called proxy bean method is equal to false. We'll go into that, and we're going to be doing some analysis what we mean by this. But for now, just remember that auto configuration annotation you can only use on top of those classes where you want to do some automatic configuration. We'll understand what I mean by that. But just remember for now that the auto configuration is not same as configuration. If you're going to write add configuration here, things should work good. If I'll write add configuration over here, you'll be getting your desired output, and your application will not break, and you'll be getting your details over here. But the moment you're going to be changing this configuration to auto configuration, even though the auto configuration has an inbuilt @configuration annotation, still the things will not work because of that configuration is not a simple configuration right here. Here they have written configuration proxy bean method is equal to false. We'll be going into this, but let's forget about that for a minute. So how can we fix this error right now, as it is saying that the Spring Boot course bean is not found, and is asking me to define this bean right here in my configuration, whereas I'm already defining my Spring Boot course bean over here. Still it is not getting detected, it is not getting created, it is not going into the container this bean, and that's why we're getting the error over here whenever we're doing a get bean method is saying that this bean is not found inside the container. So guys, I told you that whenever you'll be writing a auto configuration file, that means you want some automatic configuration. So that auto configuration will happen whenever we will be giving an entry to this particular class to a specific file. I told you now how Spring Boot auto configuration works. I told you that Spring Boot auto configuration works like this. You have a Spring Boot auto configure jar right here, and inside this jar, if you go to the Spring Boot auto configure jar, you have, let me just collapse all the file that I have expanded. Let me just collapse everything. Okay, let me go to the Spring Boot application, and if I'll go to the map and dependencies, here I should be getting something called Spring Boot auto configure. This is Spring Boot test auto configure for the test related auto configuration, but I want the normal auto configuration for my project. If you go inside it, if I'll go down, here I have the meta and a file. Here I have a Spring folder inside it, and here I have a file called org.whatever, and I have to go inside this file and I have to give an entry of my auto configuration file that I have inside this, right? So how to do that? So this jar cannot be changed, right? I cannot go to here and I cannot modify the code over here, right? I cannot just write something over here. If I'll be writing also, it will not work. So what I will do, I will just copy the same thing. I'll just copy the same pattern. I'll collapse everything first. I will go to this my project. I will go to my resources, and in my resources, I'll be creating a folder here. Okay. And the folder name I'll be giving same meta inf. Okay. And inside the meta inf folder, I'll be creating a new folder, and this folder will be Spring. Okay, the way Spring Boot people has created, and here inside it I'll be creating a file. What will be that file name? Let's go again to the map and dependencies. Let's go inside it, Spring Boot auto configure. Let's go inside it, and let's go to the meta inf folder, and let's open up that file name. You can copy the file name, Control C it, and just collapse it. Go to your meta inf Spring folder, create a new file here. So let's create a file here and paste it and do a finish, right? You have this right now, the same file name over here, and right now you can give the completely qualified path for your auto configuration class. So I'm creating a auto configuration class here inside my source main Java auto config package. Right here I have this I have the app config. This is my auto configuration file, as it is annotated with @auto configuration. So what I will do, I'll copy this file fully qualified path, copy the qualified name, and I will go to my my file, which is this one, and I'll paste it over here. So inside my auto configuration file that I have over here, I am giving an entry to the app config class with the fully qualified path. Let's just do a Control S. Now I have the file available over here. Inside that I have mentioned my custom auto configured class over here, which is app config. And right now also I am sure that in my starter app, which is my main application, which is helping me to bootstrap my application, it has the Spring Boot application. If you go inside this, I have this enable auto configuration. So it will enable the auto configuration. It will enable all the default auto configurations created by the Spring Boot team. And also it will look for any developer specific auto configuration. And also I have a similar file available in my meta inf folder, and here also I have given an entry to this. So if you go to this, Control Shift T, and go to the app config file, now this auto configuration class will be detected, right? So if I'll run this right now, you will see I'll not be getting any exception, right? See, I'm not getting any exception. I'm getting my desired result over here. But if you'll go to this file, and if you're going to remove this auto configuration that you have defined over here, now if you're going to launch it, that auto configuration file will not be triggered. See, now it is failed to start, and it is saying that define this bean in my, blah, 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 right? So I have to define the entry to my auto configuration file to this particular file that I'm having, org.springframework.boot.autoconfigure.autoconfiguration.imports in Spring Boot 3 Plus. If you are using a Spring Boot 3 before version, any version before Spring Boot 3, then this file name should be spring.factories. Okay, so I'm using Spring Boot 3 Plus. So this is a Spring Boot 3 Plus application. So this is going to be the file name if you're using Spring Boot 3 or greater. Okay, so that's good. So that's how my auto configuration is triggering right now. So this app config is my auto configuration file, right? All good, right? Now, one thing I told you that whenever I'm writing any auto configuration file, I can trigger this auto configuration based on some condition. For an example, I only want to trigger this auto configuration when I have, let's say, I have a class here called college.java, right? Let's say I only want to trigger this auto configuration when I have a college.java class that is a file called college.java, right? So whenever I have this college.java, or if you are not sure about this college.java, let me just create a random class here. Let me create a class called SeleniumExpress, right? Now I have a class over here. Let me just pull it to this package. This is a normal simple class that I have called SeleniumExpress, right? No code inside it. So I only want this auto configuration file to trigger when I have a class available in my class path called SeleniumExpress. Now this is my class path, right? Source main Java. I have the SeleniumExpress class available over here. So let's say what I'll do, I'll copy this class name. I will go to the Spring Boot course right now. App config class right now, which is the auto configuration class. Now I can give conditional on class. Let's say conditional on class, and inside this I have name and values. I can define either of the things. I think in the name I can just define my name like this, SeleniumExpress. Let's see right now if this is working. Let me just resume it. It should work. And I'll relaunch my application. Oh, it's not working. It's saying that this class is right now not present. Why it is saying that? Because I have not defined the completely qualified path name. Let me just copy the qualified path name. Let's go to my app config, and here I'll be just pasting, not like this. I'll go to my SeleniumExpress, copy the qualified name from here. Let's say I'll go to my app config and paste my complete qualified name right here. Now look at that. Now I have a conditional on class annotation, and I'm saying if this class called SeleniumExpress is present inside the class path, then only create this bean. Let's just see like right now if it is working or not. Let me just run this. See, now this class present inside the class path, and that's why this bean is getting created. And if this bean is getting created, I'm able to access this bean over here. All right, from the container, and I'm able to call this particular method show Spring Boot course details. But what about right now if I'll go over here and if I'll delete this SeleniumExpress class? Now delete this. Okay, so now see, in my auto configuration class app config, will this bean will be created? Before this bean will be created, first this application config class need to be considered as the auto configuration class. Well, I have given the entry inside this file. Now the @enable auto configuration annotation will trigger this app config class. This will be considered for auto configuration. But here I have given a conditional on class annotation that this class need to be present inside the class path. Do we have it right now? We don't have it right now over here inside this package. So right now, if I'm going to relaunch it, you're going to be seeing that we are having a problem. See, now it is saying that this Spring Boot course, this bean could not be found. A component required a bean type of Spring Boot course is not found. And it is saying that the following candidates were found but could not be injected. So it is saying this bean is found but could not be injected. Why? Bean name Spring Boot course in the app config not loaded because the conditional on class did not find the required class called SeleniumExpress. The SeleniumExpress is required in order to load this bean or create this bean. So this bean cannot be created because this class is not found. Now if you're gonna do a Control-Z and get this class back, now if you're gonna resume your Spring Boot application, you will see the things are working good, right? So you can either write conditional on class and give and specify the name like this, or you can just do something like this. You can just do value, and you can just say SeleniumExpress dot class. This will also work fine, right? If you're gonna resume this, right, you can also gonna get the desired value because this class is present. Now the name and value both are same. The value will not work if the class does not present, unlike the previous case. If you're gonna remove this, okay, now it's going to complain this class does not exist, right? In that case, you can just write name here, and you can just give the fully qualified path over here for the SeleniumExpress, if you do not want any compilation error, unlike the previous case, right? You can just write com.SeleniumExpress blah blah blah. Even though this class does not exist at all right now, we will not get any problem. This will compile, right? So yeah, so that's the thing. So conditional on class right now, I'm going to be removing, right? And Control S, Control Shift O, there we go. Things are working. All good. I'm going to show you one last annotation. Okay. So, okay. Now I will just say this bean will be created only when I'll just say conditional on bean. Conditional on bean. This bean will be created, but only create that bean when this condition match. What is the condition? Okay. This bean should be created when we have a college bean available inside my application context. Let's say name is equal to college. So now what I mean by that, this bean will be created when this condition matched. And what is the condition? Name should be college, right? So there should be a bean called college available inside the application context. Right now you can see I have a college class here, right? So I don't have any bean over here. Cool. Then the college bean is not over here, isn't it? Any classes where we are defining the college bean right now? In my controller, no. In my starter app also, there is no college bean defined. So right now, let me just close all the other things. Okay. So now I feel like this bean will not be created and we're going to be getting an exception. If I'll be running this, if you're going to see here, see right now it is saying that Spring Boot course bean could not be created because the following candidates were found but could not be injected. Bean method Spring Boot course in app config is not loaded because the conditional on bean college did not find the beans named college. So the college bean is not found inside the application context, and that's why even though this bean is present, even though you have defined this bean, still this bean is not taken into the consideration, and this bean has not been created and pushed inside the application context. So how can we basically fix this? You can go to the college class. You can just write @component here. Let's Spring to create the object for this component. And what is the bean name? Bean name should be by default college only. But let me specify the bean name like this, college. Now, if you're going to relaunch it, you can see like your class should work fine and your application should bootstrap fine. And, right now, this college bean will be created by the Spring and will be pushed to the container. And when your auto configuration class will be considered right now, the auto configuration class have a bean, and this bean will be created because it has a conditional on bean, and that matches because this college bean is found. Okay, this college bean is found inside the application context right now. If you're going to remove it, this will not work. Now this bean will not be created. If this bean will not be created in your starter app, this line will be giving you a problem. Get bean method, the Spring Boot course bean you will not be getting because the Spring Boot course bean you have defined inside your auto configuration file, and this will not be created because this bean is not found inside the application context, right? Now if you're going to launch it, this will not work. Okay, this is not working. Alternatively, you can fix it. You can go to your starter app and you can create your college bean right over here. You can just write college. Let's say college. This is the bean name. Okay, by default the method name is going to be the bean name, and you can just say new college and you can make it a bean right over here. Okay, by default the bean name whatever you are giving, the method name that you are giving, that's the bean name. If you're going to run this, things are working fine, but if you're going to write anything over here, this will not work because right now the bean name will be college 123, and this will not work. The bean name is college 123, but the bean that is required to create this bean is going to be college. So in this case, this is going to be the bean name that I'm looking for in order to construct the Spring Boot course bean. So I can go to the starter app, and the college 123 bean name, you can change it to name equal to college like this. Okay, now the college bean is exist. This bean will be created. The college bean will be created with the bean name called college, and now the application config class also have a Spring Boot course bean. This bean will also be created because the desired bean it is looking inside the container is also found. So if this bean will be created, then my starter app can get the Spring Boot course bean, and also it will be able to call this particular method without any exception. So if I'm going to run this, things should work fine. All right. I hope it is making sense. So that's all about a simple coding example of how the auto configuration works. So remember, you have to create a file, okay, and you have to create a class like this. You have to annotate with @auto configuration, and you can define any condition that you want to apply over here before you trigger your bean. You want to manage, like, if that is satisfying, then create the bean. If that is satisfying, then consider my auto configuration class, right? So yeah, so that's it. So I will be removing the code because I do not want this code to be considered for you right now. So I'll be deleting all this file. I do not want this thing, so I will also delete the meta.inf file before proceeding further. And also I'll just go to the starter app, and I'll remove all this run method, this bean that I have created, and I'll remove all these things, and I'll just do a Control-Shift-O to fix all the imports. So everything is there like as usual, and I can also remove this application context object, Control-Shift-O to remove any unnecessary imports. So we're going to be discussing a lot about auto configuration in the future lessons and how it actually works. But every time you are basically wondering, like, what is basically being auto configured for me? One simple thing you can do, you can go to this Hello Spring Boot project or whatever the project that you have created, go to the source main resources file, and we can add one more property here. The property name here is going to be debug equal to true. So I can just write debug, and it's just wait for the auto prompt to come, and you can just debug, and you can just write debug equal to true. Just save this, and you start your Spring Boot application one more time. And now you're going to be finding all those things which has been auto configured for you are going to be popped out in the console that you are having. Now you can see there are a lot of positive matches. So here you can see there are a lot of positive matches. So all these auto configurations are happening based on some classes which has already been present inside your class path. So basically you can see there are a lot of positive matches here, and it is configuring a lot of different things for you, like a dispatcher servlet here. The dispatcher servlet is being auto configured for you, and you as a developer doesn't have to write the dispatcher servlet like that. You don't have to write a embedded web server factory customizer. And as I have told you already, this is basically helping you to set up a Tomcat server for you. So all these things are basically getting auto configured for you. So there are some error MVC auto configuration is also there. And all these error things like the white label error view configuration, all these things are doing what? Let's say whenever you are basically getting an error, let's say I'm writing hello 1 2 3 and there is no page exist like this. So you are getting this white label error page, right? So how this page is getting generated, because there is some auto configuration has matched and Spring Boot is generating this error page for you. And all this error stuff that you are seeing, this auto configuration stuff is basically helping you to do certain things like viewing an error page, setting up some other different things which is going to be helpful for the error handling, right? Like that, as I have told you, the HTTP message converter auto configuration, this will be helpful for the Java object to Jackson object, the conversion that you are having. You are not writing any code for that, right? So these files are basically helping you to set up some Jackson related configuration and some conversion related configuration. So this all codes has been already written by Spring Boot, and you don't have to write those configuration related code to make any Java to Jackson conversion happen. All these codes are already there. And if you want to see this code, what you can do here is that you can go to the Maven dependency, and you know there is a jar here called Spring Boot auto configuration. And if you remember here, if you go to the pom.xml file, in the dependency hierarchy, if I collapse everything, right here you have this Spring Boot starter which is coming with Spring Boot starter web. And if you open this, it is bringing in the Spring Boot auto configure jar. Like that, if you're gonna come down, there will be some negative matches. As I have shown you, there is a file where lot of auto configuration classes was mentioned. Was all those auto configurations are getting triggered, and all those things are triggered by Spring Boot, and Spring Boot is doing variety type of auto configuration for me? No. It is doing only those auto configuration what is needed. For an example, here are the negative matches. Let's say I'm not using active MQ here. So active MQ configuration did not match. The condition did not match because those jars are not present inside the class path, and there are some other condition which is not matching. So the active MQ related auto configurations are not triggering. The Artemis related auto configuration are not triggering. The batch related auto configurations are not triggering. Like that, there are a lot of negative matches as well. But the important thing is that the positive matches. Now here there are a lot of positive matches like dispatcher servlet and the other stuff which has been automatically configured because Spring Boot did guess it, because I have these dependencies are present inside my class path. And let's say the dispatcher servlet auto configuration is triggered, and basically there is some condition matches, and that's why it is basically created some auto configuration, and it did rain all this code which is present over here. It's created all this bean, and so that I as a developer don't have to create all these beans by myself. And that's how the auto configuration is really a cool feature by Spring Boot, and all this auto configuration are triggering behind the scene. So more about the auto configuration will be covered in the later lessons. I think this is going to give you some kind of impression for now. Alright, so that's it for this particular video. In the next video is going to be the last video of this particular series, and we're going to be talking about a concept called Maven wrapper. And with this, we're going to be wrapping up our Hello Spring Boot series, which was the introduction to the template, the Spring Boot template that your Spring Boot initializer is providing to you. So I hope that you're going to be practicing this particular video, this auto configuration stuff. And maybe if you're watching this video from my paid playlist, go ahead and explore the tons of auto configuration related things that I have discussed over there. And if you're watching this in YouTube, just give me some time. If I get some time, I'll just record some more videos on auto configuration, only if you are interested, and I'm going to be posting it over here for free as well. Okay, so I'll see you guys in the next video, and till the time I meet you guys, lots of love. Thank you very much for loving the series and giving me a lot of comments, and I'm really liking it. So for series like this, make sure that you do subscribe to the channel, you are liking the video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to follow me on my Facebook and my Instagram page to communicate with me. Alright, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Till the time, bye bye, take care, and happy coding.